For us, Sankalp is just the beginning of a conversation.
Entrepreneurs from all over the world come to India, rather than the Indian entrepreneur being showcased to the world.
Through Sankalp Forum, we started building a public good platform that can really create a vibrant, workable ecosystem for early stage enterprises.
Sankalp is the determination to solve the problems that need to be solved.
We are serving the most discerning customers on the planet.
The 3 billion that Sankalp is focused on are focused on people who are basically have been left behind.
This kind of summit is critical for us.
It allows you to look at a much larger market.
So innovation is definitely important, but after the innovation has happened, how you reach 3 billion people is more important.
We are a very early stage startup, and a platform like Sankalp Global Summit 16 is a very apt platform for us.
Sankalp actually showcases early stage enterprises, which is the stage wherein we require the maximum amount of external support or help.
Individual is not anonymous anymore.
For us, Sankalp is just the beginning of a conversation. We don't think that platforms can really make the change. Platforms are people for us to get everyone together and have the same conversation. The real action is really behind the scenes. So for us, getting the conversation started, getting people to focus on right topics and agendas is the first step, right? And that's what Sankalp really is for us. Start the conversation and then continue those conversations after Sankalp is long over. And come back every year and do a check on what did we do last year.
In 2009, if you go back and look at India, what you would see is the idea of impact investing or early stage or startup India didn't exist. We were trying to make investments in companies that were actually trying to make a difference to the life of people coming from the lower strata, and at the same time make money. That was an unknown concept. What we realized is, how do you actually reach out to investors, government, policymakers, global audience, and attract their attention towards the opportunities in India. And at the same time, let the Indian entrepreneurs present their stories to the world. And Sankalp therefore came up as an idea. Probably the hidden idea behind the whole thing was that can we actually showcase India as the global pioneer in this space? And those two things are basically what led to creation of Sankalp.
Through Sankalp Forum, we started building a public good platform that can really create a vibrant, workable ecosystem for early stage enterprises. What we wanted to demonstrate was the belief that social enterprises and entrepreneurship really works on ground, and it is an investable asset class. So we wanted to catalyze more financing, resources and investments into the space, and that's the basic premise we started with.
So according to World Health Organization, in any country, 10% of the people have some form of the disability, and 1% of them need wheelchair. That's a staggering 13 million people in India alone. They operate very nicely indoors, but they're unusable outdoors, specifically on rough terrain, which is very prevalent in India. There exists an established distribution channel for wheelchairs through which we are planning to take it across to the market.
You are taking advantage of established large-scale systems. There are people already with wheelchairs. There are bicycle manufacturers. And I think you're very intelligently taking advantage of the scale and the low cost that's available through other systems.
Thank you, sir. That's a privilege.
I always say that Sankalp is great for getting unlikely people together. It's an unlikely alliance. And that's where the next generation of innovation is going to come from. When a scientist is sitting and talking to a farmer, when a venture capitalist is going and meeting a absolutely, designer, we need to have those unlikely alliances happen. So that's really what the purpose of Sankalp is. Make, people that you should meet people here that you would have never met anywhere else. You wouldn't have a chance to meet, actually.
We are serving the most discerning customers on the planet. These are people for whom disposable income is limited, and so they're going to be very careful the way that they spend their money. I think that's part of the change in what we do here at the Sankalp Forum is try to find these innovators, try to find these entrepreneurs who are trying to bring awesome, great products, great services to the poor, instead of, if I may dare say, the traditional development paradigm, which seems to have accepted poor products for poor people.
The 3 billion that Sankalp is focused on are focused on people who are basically have been left behind largely in the economic growth that's happened around the world in the last couple decades. And basically there's a new push now to actually see the opportunity of investing to bring products and services to improve livelihoods at this level on a commercial basis, on a investable basis. And the result here is, the goal here is to both return a good, strong return to investors, but also to create impact in the lives of low-income populations.
The next 3 billion, why is that important? Because you've served the top 1 or half a billion, and you created massive discontinuities in income and well-being that capitalism doesn't have a choice. It's saturated actually. It doesn't have a choice but to reach the next layer of oil under the rock.
What is it that all the energy, the excitement, the passion that we hear and we see social entrepreneurs bring in, what is it that we can do with this, and how can we leverage it to make sure that the government and the social entrepreneurs can be strong partners to deliver basic services to the poorest of the poor?
It's heartwarming to hear that India is becoming the innovation hub for social enterprises. Clearly, we're seeing this happening in a number of sectors. But what could be done in terms of policy and framework to make this into a sector in its own right?
If you think about the United States, what is the future of the U.S. economy? It's very much driven by innovation and by entrepreneurship. So what we needed in the United States, particularly post-Great Recession of 2009, was a policy that greatly expanded entrepreneurship, regardless of whether it was for-profit, non-profit, or hybrid.
Social entrepreneurship is very new in Malaysia. Prior to Magic, there was not a single government agency or government ministry that focuses on social entrepreneurship. And to give you a context of that, there is 84 over government ministry or agencies focused on entrepreneurship in Malaysia.
For the financing piece to work, you need better enterprises. For enterprises to be better, you need a whole ecosystem to work around them. And that ecosystem piece almost became an important aspect that we had to condition our hypothesis around. Just the financing aspect is not going to help. Just capital and talent is not going to help. You actually need institutions that promote entrepreneurship, you need institutions that nurture entrepreneurship, you need different organizations and partner institutions to come in at different parts of the spectrum in the whole journey of an enterprise. And that ecosystem, unless each partner and each institution knows where it can work best to its fullest capacity, is what will make a vibrant ecosystem. So that's been a real focus for us.
Something that struck me, which a few others are doing, the Tata Group has been an innovator in this too, the fact that you reward failures. You want to spend a moment talking about that, because I think for many of the young innovators here, that may be very interesting, that how do you encourage innovation by even rewarding failures?
In fact, we're just going into the final stage of an annual innovation recognition and reward program. A very large number of innovations are destined to fail. And if you do not recognize and allow people to fail, then you're automatically restricting the number of people who will even try and innovate.
How do we ensure that people do not fear failure? How do you take away the fear of failure? And this was the very interesting innovation that came about, which was, why don't we actually have 1 award out of 3 which actually rewards failure? So that's the Dare to Try award, which the Tata Innovista gives out every year.
In these past 8 years, we have directly worked with about 1,500 enterprises, early stage enterprises. These are enterprises that are usually in the first 3 years of being in existence. And that's usually sort of the valley of death for them. If they cross that first 3 to 5 years of their existence, they manage their finances, they manage their capacities and their talent, they'll probably make it to the other side. They'll probably survive for a long time.
Sankalp actually showcases early stage enterprises
which is the stage wherein we require the maximum amount of external support or help, which is the stage where we are still building our products or still testing it out in the field and swimming in unknown waters territories. I met a lot of people here who could support me in that endeavor, who have 30 years of experience in this space, who could give me the relevant connections or even the most basic guidance, who could tell me what all were the areas that I needed to look out for. Additionally, it gives a validation. So after this, if I approach an investor and I tell them that, okay, I was part of the Sankalp showcase, we won there. So it builds an inherent amount of trust that if a platform such as Sankalp has, who have been showcasing entrepreneurs for almost 10, 12 years now, so if they're doing it for you, then they must have seen something for you. So it validates that for the entrepreneur.
Entering a very interesting future, a future where it's going to be volatile, unpredictable. There's going to be so many changes that's going to happen in all various industries, and no one really knows what the future is going to look like.
Jugaad, in my personal view, is highly overrated.
Jugaad is a band-aid. It works, it heals. But sustainability of solutions requires a non-Jugaad approach. But if Jugaad you say as instant creativity to fix a problem for the short term, I'm with it. Innovation in business models, using the surfeit of technology that is available, whether it's in telecom, computers, devices, electronics, all this coming together with new business models aimed at sectors that are important to these 3 billion people, I think that's the crux. How do you intersect all these together and create viable business models out of it?
Jugaad, in my personal view, is highly overrated. It cannot be sustainable. It's something that we like to say and make ourselves feel good that Indians are the inventors of Jugaad, which is, well, which is true, but it's not something that can be seen as a long-term fix. Jugaad by definition is a short-term fix. And if you're talking about 3 billion people, a short-term fix won't get you there.
I think what we're seeing in India is, of course, there's lots of quick fixes still going on in India, but there also is some serious innovation going on. An example is we've invested in an Indian company that is bringing a new breast cancer screening device to market.
I have the solution in my hand. It's a handheld probe. It connects to a mobile device to provide breast examinations at the point of care.
It really takes the cost down by orders of magnitude. It's portable, it can be taken anywhere in India, it's battery operated, and it has efficacy of technologies that are tens and hundreds of times more expensive. So this is true innovation that is bringing a valuable healthcare service to India that will actually save lives.
Hi guys, I'm the co-founder of a crowdfunding platform called Keto. Keto really is an abbreviation for Key to Tomorrow because
to have a confluence of innovators, like you said, entrepreneurs and investors together in one place is fantastic. And also a lot of the people, a lot of the entrepreneurs and innovators here are very new to the business. So to put them in touch with investors that have a lot of experience in the business is fantastic. It's a win-win for both, I think. It's a win for the investors because you're interacting with new ideas and new minds. And for the innovators and the entrepreneurs, you're actually taking the experience of these people that have been around for so long. So I think it's fantastic.
The ecosystem to support the innovators, I mean, it's there. In India, there's a particularly high concentration now, today, 10 years on. I've been involved in this since 2006 or 7, and I think that we see a fabric now. We see that there is sort of not only is there a pipeline of entrepreneurs, there is essentially a pipeline of supporters and funders at all the stages. India is a leader, I think, is a world leader in this regard. There is a high quality concentration of super high quality people. The issue though is still extreme fragmentation, a lack of information sharing, and ultimately a lack of collaboration that I think is the responsibility of every single one of us that comes to these types of events.
We're entering a very interesting future. A future where it's going to be volatile, unpredictable. There's going to be so many changes that's going to happen in all various industries, and no one really knows what the future is going to look like. The system that we currently have do not really respond well to a lot of these changes and also the innovation that's happening. So I think that for people to be able to come to a platform like Sankalp and really listen to the various innovation that's happening on the ground and learn from it and how we can react to it, whether as a venture capitalist or as a government or as an investor or even as a policymaker, is really interesting. And on the other side as well, for the innovators, to be able to then work with these guys to help them innovate and help them change, and also help themselves to get to a certain scale that they need so that we can make a world a better place, is where it's very interesting.
One of the things that's happening is the ecosystem that's supported the development of the internet and of mobile consumer and other kinds of areas, that some of the same principles and some of the same resources are very applicable to entrepreneurs trying to solve other kinds of problems. So we're starting to see that people who have focused historically on things that underserved markets are now realizing that those ecosystem benefits and those ecosystem services can be delivered more broadly and have a big impact.
90% of the innovation that we see in India can't even be called innovation because it's derivative. There are only 10% good ideas, 90% are, Me Too ideas. It's a takeoff on already existing stuff. So I think when 90% of it is derivative, people say that why is capital not there? Capital is not there for derivative ideas. Capital is always there for new ideas. Definitely an innovation ecosystem needs to be built, and that's one of the at least efforts that Sankalp Forum is trying to create. That let's get all the right stakeholders together. Let there be capital providers, let there be capacity providers, let there be people who can mentor, let there be people who can actually provide advice. You need everything actually. So that's what we are trying to see, if we can create an ecosystem of innovation going in India.
The last mile is the biggest challenge known to commerce.
Solutions and scalability are synonymous. If it's not scalable, it's not a solution. If it's affecting only and impacting only one person, again, it makes you feel good, but it's not sustainable when you're talking about a 3 billion kind of challenge that one needs to overcome.
Innovation, until implemented, is absolutely useless. Idea has no value. Value is in the implementation. And Sankalp is helping to reach those people, to implement it. That is the biggest take-home message, even from the name of Sankalp Summit, that how you will reach 3 billion people.
In many cases, it's very hard to scale if you want to do it yourself. And when you're looking at what we are calling the next 3 billion, scaling can really take a lot of time, effort and money. And a startup usually has limited amounts of all of these. Look for partners. Look for partners whether they are, whether you get them at the Sankalp Forum or at the Tata Group. Look for partners to help you scale. People who have, and look for people whose objectives are somewhat aligned to yours.
Is the cost of your finding and acquiring a customer lower than the lifetime value that customer can deliver to you in profit? In a world where you're trying to get to a very large scale, you have to have a path to profitability. And when you have constraints on affordability, in other words, prices have to be kept relatively low, you've got to make sure that your cost structure is in line with that. And I think what's happened in the Indian ecosystem in the last year is there was some exuberance and people forgot about unit economics. And so you're now seeing some backlash in some of the investments. But now there's a refocusing on unit economics, which I think is a really good thing.
We're looking for the business owners and entrepreneurs that have scalable business models to deliver sanitation to the poor. And that may sound obvious, but actually it's been really difficult to make businesses work in that sector, delivering to low-income communities. One of the benefits, I think, of our coalition in working with leaders in business is that we have the opportunity to not only look at a business model, can it scale, but rather, how do we help it to scale?
So we're talking about the ideal of collaborating, but you've actually put it into practice in one of the areas most needed, giving people access to toilets. So how did you do that collaboration piece? It must have been tough. What were the big challenges?
So the challenge was that it was a taboo. Nobody can say toilets or shit, and it's very embarrassing. So you cannot move the taboo to normal directly. So you have to move the taboo from taboo to media visibility. The media love stories. They're not so interested in toilets. They're more interested in readership. So if we are able to make it very funny, then you create a lot of readership. And then the politicians say, hey, if I talk toilet, I get into the news. Then the politicians start talking toilets. So once they start talking toilet, the bureaucrats say, hey, I'm going to support my boss. So they start programs on toilet. And then the academia start to say, hey, I can publish. And then the NGO says, now toilet is fundable. So then the donors say, wow, this is a serious problem. I didn't know, because in the past they don't call it sanitation, they call it a water issue. So when you call it water, everything go underwater, right? Drown, right?
This is an area where return will not come immediately. And sometimes if you're truly looking for impact, you also have to subsidize one part where people still cannot pay, with an area where you are actually generating surpluses to pay for the other part. So you need the right kind of investors for this, and impact investors are the right kind of investors for this. This is an area which is being sort of championed by Sankalp.
So for us, the idea was to go with this ecosystem approach, ecosystem for impact enterprises, and really leverage our global networks and regional networks to demonstrate that enterprises work. Enterprises are investable. If you give them the right ecosystem, the right nurturing and capacity building support, they can build scalable businesses. They can create jobs as mainstream businesses do, and they can create profits and returns for the investors.
Often when you're in innovation process and creating products, the path that you choose can define the rest of your journey. So you have to make sure that you get service, you get help early on in the process. Make sure that you have the right product, do a lot of validation and testing, that there's a market for your product. Once you have something ready, how will you get it to masses? I think all those questions have to be answered very early in the process.